Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as we begin a brand new era. We tend to discuss Doctor's eras, but the previous handover from the first Doctor to the second Doctor was a less sort of like defined thing than the handover from the second to the third. The era of the programme didn't change, not really. They just tried this wacky idea out of the Doctor changing his appearance, which was just another in a long line of wacky ideas that included dimensionally transcendental police boxes and sonic screwdrivers, and then production just continued as normal. Here, though, one era definitively ended and a new one definitively began. The show redefined itself almost entirely. It was now in colour, it had a new leading man, a new leading lady, and it even had a new format. Gone were the travels in space and time, arguably what the entire show had been about up until this point. It had been gutted and entirely refitted, basically. When Stephen Moffat took over the show, he made mention of the fact that his overhaul was nothing compared to what they did in 1970. And I can see where he's coming from. There was some sort of like, maybe not concern, but a new showrunner coming in 2010 with a brand new Doctor, a brand new companion, with no sort of like overlapping elements from the previous era, at least not for the first couple of episodes, before you then brought the Weeping Angels and River Song back. But the thing is, as sort of striking as the overhaul is for season 7, new, ostensibly new production team, new Doctor, new companions, colour, earthbound format, we still do have a recurring character from the previous seasons 5 as well. And that kind of helps to ease the transition. Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart makes his reappearance here and very quickly establishes himself as part of the furniture for this new order. The character himself first appeared as a regular authority figure, nothing much special on paper, and the like of which Doctor Who had done many times before, but Nicholas Courtney's performance brought him to life in a way that made his return in The Invasion feel really welcome. And that he comes back here isn't just logical for the new format, it's actually comforting. He doesn't just serve a purpose plot-wise, and let's face it, the use of UNIT is a masterstroke in crafting this particular iteration of the show, even if they may come to be overused later on. No, not just plot-wise, he also serves as a really good reminder that this is the same show that we're watching, and the Doctor is the same man. And with so much change happening all at once, without the Brigadier, that could have been lost. The presence of one constant does turn out to be crucial because, look, let's face it, we had the luxury of seeing Tennant turn into Smith and Capaldi turn into Whittaker. So the fresh starts for Moffat and Chibnall weren't as such, like they didn't feel as such clean breaks as this one did, because obviously we do not see the transformation from Troughton into Pertwee. The last we saw of the Troughton Doctor, he was spinning away from us without a head, being made to feel giddy. And then we have the new man falling out the TARDIS, and we're into a pacey alien invasion story with room for creepy living plastic dummies. It's definitely the right way to go about it. Rather than dwelling on everything that's different, it just gets on with it. And those dummies would go on to become one of the most remembered monsters, and the monster of choice when relaunching the show after a 16-year absence. The Autons are a fantastic creation and are really striking in their simple, blank appearance. Them coming to life to that excellent soundtrack and then rampaging around the streets is one of the most thrilling images in all of Doctor Who so far. It is a shame that the nesting creature itself is a bit of a letdown, but I lay the blame for that somewhere it isn't normally laying, and that's John Pertwee. And not even his gurning when it embraces him either, like I'm fine with that. It's more to do with his acting beforehand when he's barking at Liz and flicking switches. It just makes him look like he's expecting it. Whenever I watch that, I always feel like rather than watching the Doctor being attacked by an alien menace, I always feel like I'm watching a man waiting for his cue. And therefore what that means is when the creature does emerge, I'm already not engaged with it. The performance beforehand only makes it look even more fake when it comes out. And yeah, I said I haven't got a problem with his gurning, but queued up by the performance right before, it doesn't help. It's a shame because what Pertwee has done in this story up until that point is, and I don't use this word lightly, stupendous. He settles into the role far quicker than either of his predecessors did, and that means that his debut as the Doctor is the most confident and assured of the three so far. By the end of episode 3, he's firmly established as the Doctor, whereas it took Troughton a little while to settle in. Hartnell too, really, but that's more to do with the fact that he was still working the role and the actual character out for a bit. Conversely, Pertwee glides in and makes a supremely smooth landing. Wisely, the fact he's changed isn't brushed off completely, but it is made sure of that it doesn't get in the way of the plot. For someone who cavorts in the shower, ponces about in a cloak and the most ludicrous shirt-cravat combo imaginable, and steals the most inconspicuous car possible, he gives quite a naturalistic performance. When he first meets Liz and politely asks if he has to keep calling her Miss Shaw, it's just an ordinary bloke talking, and I really like that. He covers a lot of bases in this first appearance, and with the exception of that climactic showdown with the Nestine, he covers all of them with considerable ease. By the end of the story, when he's childishly wishing that he could keep hold of the car, we are under no illusions that he is the man for the job, and that, rather miraculously, makes it 3 for 3 on casting the Doctor. Now, a little disclaimer, I historically have never considered myself a huge fan of the Third Doctor or the Third Doctor's era. We'll probably look at why the more it goes on this marathon. But what I will say is that with every watch of it, with every subsequent marathon, I like it more and more. And I think I've always been sort of kept slightly at arm's length by, I guess, the kind of not arrogance, but the sort of superiority of the Third Doctor, which is borne out by his sort of adeptness with the action scenes, and but being a bit of a know-all and knowing his cheeses. It's also sort of reflected in the fact that he thinks of himself as quite superior, and I don't know, that always sort of after a sort of fairly quite humble performance from Troughton, it's very jarring. And I don't know, I like my Doctor a little bit sort of scruffy and I guess sort of with a bit of humility, and Pertwee never really had that for me. But I have to concede that whenever I watch Doctor Who in order from beginning to most recent episode, whatever that is at the time, the change from the War Games to Spearhead from Space is so pronounced, and Pertwee's a big part of that. But I can't deny that he is incredibly good, and that always surprises me as somebody who always thinks of I guess Doctor Who as past tense, because that's how it mostly existed when I was, although that's not true actually. I've been alive for over half its life now, but it was off for a really long time. But I'd always considered a classic Doctor Who as the past tense. That I'd always had my firm held belief that I didn't really like the Third Doctor all that much, and every marathon challenges that. And I've got a feeling, considering how positively I responded to him watching Spearhead from Space this time, that might change even more on this particular marathon. So stay tuned to find out. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, just so that you don't miss out on me probably massively reevaluating my opinion of Jon Pertwee as the Doctor. He is a great presence, ringing the changes from both Doctors before him, yet still offering up enough reassurance that he's the same guy. Babbling on about communicating with his eyebrows on the planet Delphon is a wonderful bit of silly, which beautifully undercuts Lethbridge Stewart's seriousness, as well as making for a playful and friendly introduction of himself to Liz. My favourite Pertwee moment of Spearhead from Space, though, undeniably, it's his delivery of the emphasis that he puts on this line is so wrong, but it sounds so right. I absolutely love it. I also love Liz Shaw, who might on paper come across as unlikable, as stuffy as the Brigadier can seem, and how much garbage it sounds like he's talking. He's still the familiar element to us, the only familiar element to us from the previous iteration of the show. And so the way that Liz then talks to him, even though she's well within her rights to, he's, like I said, he's quite stuffy and it sounds like he's talking absolute nonsense. However, the way that Liz talks to him could serve to put us off her because of our familiarity with the Brig. But I find her attitude really charming, thanks to Caroline John. Basically, she's got a sort of withering sarcasm, but has a glint in her eye, and it's like she strikes that balance so well. Bearing in mind that I fell very much in love with Zoe and bid her farewell before I felt I should have, I still find myself drawn to Liz as a character, and the way the Doctor conducts himself when he meets her, and the way she then goes on to handle the Doctor with all of his talk of laboratories inside police boxes, etc. It all adds up to the feeling of, once again, the Doctor has made a great friend. Pertwee and John both put the work in to make this friendship really believable and work, and it's quite impressive considering that they're both new to the show. Basically, they've come in to Spearhead from space, an existing show, a familiar show, but which they have no background in whatsoever. They are ably supported as well. Hugh Burden as Channing is excellent, and the image of him retreating from the contoured glass window of the office door is a lovely flourish. The Seeleys verge on being an unflattering depiction of the working classes, but Sam Seeley is actually quite a fun presence, even if I do feel a tad guilty about saying that. I'm less impressed by Derek Smee as Ransom though. He seems more terrified than anyone we've yet met in the entire programme so far. And I'm including Susan and Victoria and all of those characters that have a reputation for being scream queens in that. They've got nothing on Ransom. And is it just me he vividly reminds of Mr. Bean? And that doesn't help either, even though I know full well that this predated Mr. Bean by 20 years. Either way, for me, he's something of a weak link in this, overselling the fear acting by a considerable margin. Too far to be credible. I know that Spearhead from Space and Season 7 are very fondly thought of, and Spearhead from Space is a fantastic statement of intent for the new Doctor and for the show's future. It's a spectacular debut from Pertwee, and he acquits himself fantastically well. The story is solid, no question, and the new Doctor is just great. The new format even has legs, as does the intriguing new companion, which... what I mean is the idea of Liz as a character has got legs, even though I'm tying myself in knots here. She's got great legs, but what I mean is... Never mind, shut up, Chris. But there are flaws in this story that I think sometimes get overlooked in the melee of change, and I feel like I've said, I find Ransom is one of them. And I'm going to sound like a whiny fan now, but the gear change is so sort of distinct that it ends up not being, by definition, all that smooth, and so sometimes I do feel left behind by Spearhead from Space. It's only marginal, but it serves to sort of forgive that analogy, I don't really know what I'm trying to say. I find it hard to articulate exactly why I don't think Spearhead from Space is perfect. I know a lot of people do think it's perfect. I actually think that Season 7 gets better. And I never really know why that is. Maybe it's because Spearhead from Space is sort of like the starter to a absolutely delicious main course. Still, it's more than enough to buoy me up for what's to come, and it's a more than solid story. I just can't bring myself to, in my heart of hearts, declare that it's perfect, which a lot of rave reviews might suggest that it is. 257 episodes in, and I've just welcomed a fantastic new Doctor and a brilliant new companion, and got comfy on Earth for the foreseeable. I suppose, the creme brulee is cracked on Season 7, and I can't wait to get into it. Seriously, I can rewind that over and over and over again. Almost Pertwee versus the Nestine, but I may have to go for Ransom's drooling. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed Tripping the Light Plastic, then you know how YouTube works. Please do give it a like and share it around far and wide. And what are your thoughts on Spearhead from space? Is it one of Doctor Who's best ever offerings, or is it too clunky a gear change? And do you welcome Pertwee with open arms, or does he have you calling for Troughton to come back? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you back here soon for some spelunking. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I will meet you underground.